Hi, so I'm in conversation with Magali Cáceres. Magali is a good old friend of mine, and she has recently completed a tenure as the Minister of Youth in the country of Paraguay. Thank you, Magali, for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Arpit, and it's a pleasure to be having this conversation. I am super happy to say that I have ended my period as Minister of Youth.
Hmm.
Um, Paraguay is the youngest country in the whole region in Latin America. Over 60% of the population has less than 30 years of age. So it was a
Wow.
huge challenge to be in charge of the institution, of the ministry. And thank God, with the help of an amazing team, we can say that we did a good job serving the young people in our beloved country.
Yeah, I think you had a very illustrious tenure as the minister, and it is indeed a young country. Is the average age 18 years in Paraguay? I was reading somewhere.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, it's 58% of the population is less than 30 years old. And that's crazy. That does represent an enormous opportunity of development in terms of what the demographic dividend
Hmm.
represents for our nation. Twice in the tenure that we had in front of the institution, we traveled the 17 states, the 17 departments of our nation, and it's amazing. It's amazing. In every department, we just saw young people that they don't ask for gifts or anything to be granted to them, just for the opportunity to work, to get a proper education.
Hmm.
And I feel that that's something that does not only apply at a national level, but that's something that applies at a global level. I mean, young people, we do want to be heard, make our voices
Absolutely.
heard. We want to reach our full potential, and we must get the necessary tools to make that happen. I think we are a generation that's full of energy and dynamism and innovation. We just need to be granted the space to create
Hmm.
um, and definitely be the protagonists of the future that we wish to have.
Right. And so, what was your vision as a youth minister? What did you think that, if I become the minister someday, here are the things that I want to change?
I feel like what really made our period um, efficient in a way is that from day one we understood that public policies cannot be made from behind the desk. Public
Hmm.
policies are constructed in the field with the people. So really, not only taking in this instance, it's the Ministry of Youth, not only taking young people as beneficiaries of programs and services, but rather as agents of change and transformation, and as protagonists of the agenda on the day-to-day basis. I feel that was key to our success, and
Hmm.
also understanding that when we talk about 60% of the population being less than 30 years old, or when we're talking about 4,000, a program of 4,000 scholarships or 13,000 opportunities, these are not cold numbers. These are people. These are dreams. I mean, and really
Hmm.
not losing the humanity
Yeah.
in oneself, and just honestly keeping the heart at the right place,
Hmm.
um, and leading with the heart, and knowing that we're talking about people who have dreams and illusions. These
Right.
are lives of the people. I mean, that's really what's behind public policy. So not losing that connection to what really matters. I feel that's also
Right.
something essential when it comes to serving from government.
Right. And you talked about, public participation in making policies and governance, etc. And interestingly, that's something that I'm soon going to be talking in my class at the San Francisco State University. So,
Wonderful.
yeah. And I was wondering, with all this, something we're going to be discussing is that how there was this old model of governance where there were top down rules and procedures and policies which were set and then implemented for the people, and then came this era where citizens were considered as customers and business values literally
Right.
crept into policy making. And we see that in America, we see that in a lot of developing countries where people are still talking about new public management and dealing with public policy as one would deal with a business problem. Uh, I know that this conversation about looking at people not as customers but as citizens is a new thing. But then, how much do you think has the transition taken place? Let's say in Paraguay, is the current cool trend is to look at government as a business, or can you run government like a business? What do you think?
I think honestly that's we're in the face of an enormous transition that we're living worldwide, also caused by how interconnected we are nowadays. We as
Mm-hmm.
citizens have direct access to our senators, our our, our president, our vice president. I mean, I think, and that communication, that accessibility, it's something that we must use to our advantage and also hold our government officials accountable. And I feel like in that space of co-creation is where truly transformation lies. I mean, here in Paraguay, with having an extraordinary youth population, this is honestly the greatest asset, the greatest capital that our nation has.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only enough to comment or criticize from the comfort of social media, but
Yeah.
it's really making a transition between the dialogue to action.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Paraguay, 3 years ago, we had an enormous movement led by young people from our national university. And
Mm-hmm.
from that movement, many public officials were dismissed from office. Some were also put in jail. So there is a greater consciousness in terms of what transparency looks like, what are the duties, the responsibilities that government officials must have, and there is a greater sense of accountability, and that's something that I truly do celebrate. But I think
Mm-hmm.
we must not stop there. It's not only knowing. I mean, in terms of education, for example, it's not only investing more in education, but it's also investing better in education. And nowadays, we do have tools that can help us as citizens know how government is investing, what they're investing in. So I do feel that we do need to. There has to be co-creation always. There has to be a sense of empowerment, of accountability. When we talk, and that's something that we did face in an institution like the Ministry of Youth, because we were in charge of the public policies of young people, and that involves education, employment, health, civic participation. I mean, you have such a broad range in the agenda that should be a concern, that should be an agenda that involves every single person living in this country, the private sector, civil society, public sector. And when that articulation happens, that's when really transformations make change. If we continue to view citizens as plain voters,
Mm-hmm.
we're we're not going to reach we're not going to reach anywhere. It's a model that has failed, that
Mm-hmm.
history has shown that it has failed. But there is a big structure that continues to operate that way. But that's why I feel it's so important to innovate in government. And it's so important to, if one decides to be part of that world, I feel like one cannot lose the the humanity, the heart,
Right. Uh-huh.
um, the light of one, because I feel that's something that the world really needs.
But then, when I see, as in Paraguay, even in India, we have a huge proportion of population which is youth, and majority of them, like in Paraguay, more than 60% of them are below the age of 30, 35. And there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of need of participating with policy making and reaching out to your uh, representatives, holding them accountable. Now, in India, what I see is there are so many people who try to reach out to their members of parliaments or members of legislative assembly, but having the access to reach them does not really mean that they are responsive.
For sure.
How do you ensure that? How did you ensure that when people try to reach you?
On a personal level, the fact that I assumed the institution. I became Minister of Youth when I was 26-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was very easy to be open, to be always online on Twitter and
Uh-huh.
Facebook and Instagram. And I had also a policy of every Friday, my doors would be open so any young person could make an appointment with me and talk about anything. So for me,
So
honestly,
anywhere from any part of the country could come up to you and just talk.
exactly.
Okay.
And it was a full afternoon that I blocked my agenda just to meet
Uh-huh.
meet young people. And I was also very much I traveled a lot because I do feel that every state had a different necessity. I mean, we can't make an agenda based on these are the needs of the young population in general. No, because every state does have peculiarities, and if public policies are not made with a specific scope, they can't really be effective. That was our personal take on the youth agenda. I mean, I feel like when we held forums in every single state in Paraguay, and in every single state, young people were demanding greater quality education. And
Mm-hmm.
something that I told them, I mean, of course, I'm the first uh, fan of a better education, and we need to be investing
Yeah.
greater, more with more budget, but also with greater quality. But
Quality.
also, do we cheat on exams? Why don't we ask ourselves, like, what are we doing to really being
Yeah.
part of the solution, not the problem, so I feel like every single person has a huge game to play based on what we really are.
Just diving a little more into the youth ministry, since 60% of your country is youth, as a youth minister, you're probably responsible for, such a huge population, and you're probably responsible for everything that they do. So what does the youth ministry essentially do?
Wow, that's an amazing question. I feel like so in paper, the Ministry of Youth is the institution in charge of articulating the youth public policies, but
Mm-hmm.
in essence, what we really the mission of the Ministry of Youth is serving young people nationwide. Um, and we from day one we understood that we had limited time and that each day counted as gold. So we focused on two pillars. The first, greater opportunities, more opportunities, and the second, greater participation. So in that
So when you
sense,
say
we
opportunities, it is job opportunities?
opportunities in terms of employment and also
Mm-hmm.
education. We had
Mm-hmm.
uh, the the most ambitious uh, scholarships program
Oh.
in the Ministry of Youth's record. We provided 4,000 scholarships um, to young people that needed that financial assistance to
Mm-hmm.
continue their university education. And we also made special scholarships for indigenous youth population, for athletes, for musicians, for people who were in jail actually as part of a reinsertion program.
Mm-hmm.
We provided also scholarships to people who had certain special needs.
Yeah.
And I feel like I mean, I think a program, when you're talking about 4,000 scholarships, of course, it's an amazing thing you can do to back 4,000 dreams. But we also must think that 11,000 people applied for the scholarship. So we left 7,000 people without that opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that they weren't qualified.
Right.
So I feel like that's a huge challenge every public institution needs to address. I mean, the resources are limited. So how
Yeah.
do you ensure an efficient administration when you have limited resource? And I think that's the power of collaboration and team and playing as a team. I feel like we, in the 10 months that we were in front of the administration, we made alliances with over 100 organizations from the
Mm-hmm.
public and private sector. And
Mm-hmm.
that for us was huge when it came to giving solutions and responses to people. We created a digital platform that had 13,000 opportunities. It was the largest opportunities platform for Paraguay's youth in our history. And that included employment opportunities, scholarships for on a national and international level. It also included courses, information regarding opportunities when it comes to health and entrepreneurship. So I feel like when you articulate, when you are connecting the dots, and when you bridge dreamers and opportunities, that's when an institution like the Ministry of Youth becomes essential.
You know, question there, that did this idea of coming up with a scholarship, or did this idea of, you know, creating this platform, did this also somewhere come from your conversations with the people you were talking about, these forums, etc.? Like, walk us through the forums. Like, what happens in these forums when you go there? How do they actually look like? How do they function?
So what we did from the first week that we assumed in office, we already we made a plan of visiting the 17 departments, working. So Paraguay has a system.
These are like 17 government departments?
Yes. So it's 17 states. We, as the executive branch, the Ministry of Youth, we worked with a youth coordinator in every single department.
So it's like these departments are regional states, or these are like government departments?
They're regional states, but they also depend on the executive.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So each state had its own youth coordinator that worked with us.
Okay.
So we went to the 17 gobernaciones. It's the state government.
Right.
We held forums, and these were very inclusive forums. I mean, we had young people in secondary, in universities, indigenous, athletes. I mean, we really wanted to make the range very, very diverse. We went with a paper and the pencil, and we just heard them. We said, what can we do for your department? How are you guys envisioning the youth agenda here? What are the needs? What's your day like here? How easy is it to get a first employment? What are the careers that are offered in the universities at a local level? And from that,
so you were crowdsourcing all of these ideas then?
Exactly. I mean, I feel like, and what we did is in every single department we had two very big petitions, which were, one, people really wanted to have an access to higher education, and the second was there was a very big gap between the opportunities that the country already had for its youth and people receiving those opportunities. So there's misinformation. So we said, if there are so many institutions that are now providing opportunities for young people, but these are opportunities that are not reaching the ears of those that are in the countryside, we need to close that gap. We need to be that bridge. That's why we created a digital platform, because here in Paraguay, 86% of the population has access to a smartphone. So we said, let's use the technology, let's use the internet to provide. We want to have like a Google of opportunity.
I think it's very interesting about this forum, because I was having this idea and I was reading it somewhere else that, you know, just like musicians, they have jam sessions. These forums are like, you know, policy jam sessions where you have some policy experts, people in the department, and then the citizens themselves. And then you kind of jam and come up with some ideas on what people need, and then just go with it.
Exactly. And I feel like it's also, we as young people, we want to make our voices heard, and not from the political speech of saying, I mean, I think we're all tired of hearing young people are in the center of our agenda, and they're
I mean, you zone out of that after a while.
and it honestly, it's bullshit. I mean, I feel like it's
No,
really
you're
not.
right.
If that is not translated into actions,
Uh-huh.
we no longer believe that speaking, again, it's not only at a local or national level, but I think regionally and globally, the public policy is shifting
Hmm.
towards a more inclusive approach. But I feel like that must be translated into actions. I feel like in here in Paraguay, women, especially in the countryside, are more vulnerable. So that's
Hmm.
why we also took special. We paid special attention to really including them in every conversation, in every program that we had. Same with the indigenous youth,
Right.
or with people that had special needs, or certain um, yeah, certain situations in life. I feel like we're talking about such a wide population,
Hmm.
and I think that diversity really is where our true potential lies.
Right. So
So
question there, Maga. Question is that, you know, okay, collecting aspirations of your citizens is one thing. How do you take feedback? Like, how do you ensure that the kind of agreement that you've reached with the people that, okay, we need to do A, B, C, D, E, and then how do you get to know whether people think that you're on the right track besides the elections, obviously?
I feel like what we did, um, so every day I really used the social media a lot, not
Hmm.
only to take the opportunities, but also every day I showed every single item in my agenda. So there
Hmm.
was it was very transparent. I mean, we were gonna make mistakes, and we did make many mistakes. But
Uh-huh.
what was questionable is that we were leaving everything on the field. I mean, it was Sunday, Saturday nights, early morning since 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. And I
Yeah.
feel that that's something that also people must know. I mean, behind government officials, it's people.
So
Agree.
what's the deal about innovation in public policy? Because there's so much talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, and a lot of times, what I sometimes feel a little uncomfortable about is that innovation is always looked at innovation in information technology, like where you bring in IT and that's considered innovation. And I think it should be much deeper than that. So what do you think? Like, what's innovation in public policy?
I feel like when we innovate, we are transforming a process
Hmm.
to make it effective for beneficiaries to be satisfied in one way or another. I
Right.
feel like that the private sector, especially in technology, it's something that we see frequently evolving and changing, and we see the benefits of it. But I feel like a sector that really needs innovation and entrepreneurship and risk taking and making processes more effective and quicker, for the beneficiaries, which are the people, to be happier, is public sector. It's government. I feel like
Hmm.
that's why it's so important to be able to make mistakes, to be able to take risks, and that in government has a very big cost.
Hmm.
That so many institutions are very slow and bureaucratic, because I mean, change is not welcome. Change is dangerous. But I feel like if we, especially as young people, if we can translate our dynamism,
Hmm.
our innovative way of thinking, our creativity to public policies, and not only public policies, but how we operate, how we can make sure that we are hearing the people, and how can they be talking to us. I don't know. I feel like that's where, for us, making taking risks and innovation in general was such a key component to our tenure. And I feel like that's, I don't know, again, it's all about the why as well. Why are you transforming? I mean, what we did in our scholarships program, just to give you a quick example,
Uh-huh.
before the scholarships program, it was everything was on paper. We
Uh-huh.
had a zero paper policy. We made everything online to also make it more transparent, because
Right.
every person could access the platform where you would apply. Every person was held accountable to the same criterias. But why did we do that? It wasn't a matter of saving money. No,
Uh-huh.
we want to make it more transparent, you know.
Right.
So I feel like that's also something essential. I mean, in innovation, you must know, when you innovate, you must really know why are you taking that risk, why are you making that change, why are you shifting things,
Mm-hmm.
um, and hope that results are positive. And if not, as any innovative process, or as any entrepreneurial process, you just pivot, you change, you shift.
Yeah.
um,
But
so I think,
bureaucrats don't like innovation. That's what
uh,
generally is the case. And bureaucrats are key elements in making any policy successful. So, how do you get them on board? And do you think it's even bad? Because sometimes, as you rightly pointed out as well, that innovation is risky. And when you're talking about risk, you are dealing with a whole country. So, you know, how risky is the risk is also a question, right?
for sure. I mean, I think that it's also, I mean, for what we did, we made sure that we didn't take no for an answer.
Hmm.
I think it's also our perseverance. And also, one, honestly, one cannot reach far if you're going by yourself. You must have allies. And
Yeah.
if you don't have allies in the public sector, fine.
Hmm.
Get allies in the private sector. Get
In the
allies from
media or whatever.
media. I mean, I think but that's why for us it was so important to really be so transparent in our communication channels. I mean, the I think people knew what we were doing because we were constantly, daily communicating, and not only saying, "Okay, this is what we bring to you." No, it's let's make this together. What do you guys think of this? How can we change this?
So
Outspoken.
what's the story about you sharing your desk with 4 or 5 interns or fellows that you hired? So it's like you have your ministerial desks in all 4 corners. Uh, you started sharing it with interns and fellows.
So before becoming before becoming minister, I did my master's in Washington D.C. in
Hmm.
innovation and government and social entrepreneurship. But before that, just before I left to D.C., I did I worked at the Ministry of Youth as director of international affairs,
Hmm.
and I remembered speaking with a minister when he just hired me. The promise that he made me was, Maga, you're gonna have a team of 3 people, you're gonna have a budget, blah blah blah. As politicians, the promises, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I believed the promises. But when I started working, I heard that we didn't have any more budget to hire people, so I was gonna be by myself. And the goals that we had set for the department were very very big. So I asked him if I could hire interns, and he told me that the ministry did not have an interns program. So I was
So
like,
this was when
perfect.
you were the director.
This was when I was the
Okay.
director.
Uh-huh.
So I told the minister when he said that we didn't have a internship program. I said, perfect. So let's create one. I can be in charge of it.
Okay.
Um, he was very, he didn't really want to create an interns program because that, again, the bureaucracy in it had, there were several risks associated to a new program, and we didn't have the proper infrastructure and
Hmm.
whatnot. And of course, all justifiable motives behind his reasoning. But I
Hmm.
told him, "Okay, let's not do an interns program. Let me just have interns that are gonna, I'm gonna be responsible for them. They're gonna be working with me directly in my department." And he told me, Maga, I think it's a great idea, but there's no room. We don't have desks for the interns.
Yeah.
So I, again, not taking no for an answer, I told him that my desk had 4 sites. So
Hmm.
I sit in one site, and we're gonna have 3 people, and each they were gonna sit in different edges of the
Right.
desk. That's
Right.
what we did. So from a team of one person, we had a team of 4 people. And honestly, Arpit, that's when it clicked that a very, very minor change
Uh-huh.
can bring such big results. Because with the team of 4 people that we had, I mean, we did a lot. We fulfilled our goals, but I feel like it's just a matter of sometimes it's better to say I'm sorry than asking for permission.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like with that attitude, we must also carry in games as important as working for your country. I feel
Hmm.
like that's honestly when you really need change and saying the system doesn't work. The system is not providing the results that people need.
Yeah.
Let's pivot. Let's make things happen. Let's make mistakes.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, that's not a bad internship though, because I talk to a lot of interns working in different organizations, and they hardly even get to see the person they are supposed to be reporting into or working
yeah.
for. So now sharing the same table wouldn't be a bad idea for the interns, right?
I feel like we also need to when we hire interns, let's empower them. Let's see what they're capable of.
Yeah, let's give them some respect at least.
Exactly. They're there for a reason. And again, honestly, I had the most fascinating experiences working with interns, with students, because they're so full of energy and they're not contaminated by the
Hmm.
bureaucracy, right? So I feel that's also something that
Which is
institutions need.
really important because,
Definitely.
yeah, protecting that, the people who are untouched by that malice and protecting that is super important because they
For
are going
sure.
to be the directors and the ministers, 10 years
One day.
down the line. Yeah,
Exactly.
no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Same way that
So,
you're going to be senator or hopefully president one day.
well, yeah, I mean, as you know, that there are just so many problems, especially in the developing countries, that we need to face. And being a policy maker can make you really short sighted in the sense that you just think on electoral cycles. So for example, like one thing that I've been talking to every politician, every member of parliament, legislative uh, assembly member nowadays, is that in India, our average age in the nation is my age. It's 28.
Wow.
And everyone is talking about youth policy, youth policy, youth policy, which is very important. Nobody is seeing that 30 years down the line, it's going to be a very old population.
Hmm.
30 years down the line, the average age, because our next generation is not going to be as large a population
Right.
pool as us. So
Hmm.
30 years down the line, the thing is that you'll have a majority of the population in their 60s who have to be supported by this very small, chunk of people. And that's
Hmm.
not a good situation to be in. But then in India, for example, we have some policy for the old age. It's not super sophisticated. And we don't have any executive arm per se dedicated like the youth ministry. So
Right.
I mean, I think that countries also need to look at that long-term horizon that, you know, if we have youth needs today, we also need to think of needs of the old age later on. So why not just build that thing right now?
Definitely. I feel like I agree with you fully. That's why the if we have a if we have legislation for young people specifically,
Hmm.
that must also be it has to be part of a process when you're
Hmm.
talking about legislation for children,
Hmm.
uh, infants, and also for adults or even people who are older, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
but that's why collaboration is so important. I mean, we cannot be thinking of institutions that are nearsighted, just thinking of the today.
Yeah.
Also, public policies must go way beyond the administration or the government that is in place for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We must be thinking long term. I mean, I feel like those are the policies that are really effective and they construct the nation that one wishes to have. We
Hmm.
must transcend And for me, that's that's one of those things that I really didn't like of being in government. I mean, the everything is not everything, but many things are just, it's this administration, everything that the previous administration did, that it's not good, it's not going to be working. We need to start from scratch, start from zero. And when you have in developing countries, we don't have any time to waste.
Oh
We
yeah,
just need to
absolutely.
of constructing. If the government, for me, there's something that I told the minister that succeeded me. There wasn't any one person more interested in him having a successful tenure than me, because
Hmm.
we there's so many things to do that I didn't want him to waste any time, and I want him to be super successful, and
Hmm.
hopefully is utilizing all the resources that we, or not, the programs and the services that we constructed in our term, and based on that he is growing everything in terms of youth policies. But if that's not the vision, if the vision is everything that Maga did is not good, let's start from scratch, let's get our proper pictures and applauses, and let's make I mean, we need to be more, we need to think bigger and think higher.
Hmm.
In general, I feel like that's the, I don't know, that's one of the reflections I had.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I think that is an important lesson for sure. And I think with this, we should close our conversation. This is something to definitely ponder upon, that in a way, what you're doing is creating something with an understanding that the opposition government or the opposition group will someday have to take that baton forward.
Exactly, definitely.
And that is probably the same thing that we should do, is that the previous government which was in place, we should not just, scrap away all of their programs, but then keep what is good, right?
Exactly. Recycle what's good, construct based on what has been done.
Yeah.
Um, things
Can't
that were
reinvent the wheel
well,
all the time.
we can't be reinventing the wheel, especially when there's so much that needs to be done and where
Yeah.
there's no time that must be wasted.
Right. And on that note, Maga, thank you so much for this interview. And
Thank
you'll see it on the Global Policy Insights website very soon. And
you.
do say a little hi to the San Francisco State University MPA students.
Hello to all the San Francisco State students. You guys have an amazing professor, the best professor you guys. And all the best. And honestly, I'm here to support in any way if you guys consider. So all the best wishes. Stay happy.